In this video, I am fishing with a professional. I'm fishing with Randy Sigler of Sigler Guide Services out of Marblehead, Massachusetts. I often charter fishing trips with him and my family. On this trip, we had a great time, and I highly recommend Randy and his team. Randy always delivers a fun fishing trip when I fish with him, and I learned so much about fishing in the ocean. On this trip, we had a great time. We started out of Marblehead Harbor in search of bait fish, and we found a school of pogies and tried to snag them and drop the hook to catch a large striper if we were lucky. We didn't catch one, so we went out into the ocean to search for bait fish, catching a lot of mackerel. While we were there catching the bait fish, we ran into this huge sunfish. This fish is huge and enjoys sitting on the surface of the ocean on its side, sitting in the sun. I've never been so close to one. I had seen one of its fins from a distance and I thought it might be a shark, but when we looked close to it, we discovered it was a sunfish. Here in the Boston area, there was a gentleman on a video talking about a sunfish just like this. His reactions to the sunfish were so funny, the video became viral. We then went to catch the striped bass. Randy is amazing at it. He's been fishing in the area for several years. He knows so many fishing locations by memory that trips with him are very productive. He generally targets rocky shores on the islands in the Marblehead and Salem Sound area. We anchored the boat near the rocks and cast a few live line mackerels onto the rocks to try to catch the striped bass. He uses a slip bobber rig. So the bobber is like a floating rig and he casts this over and the bait sort of slips down below the floating bobber. We caught several striped bass, and everyone had a turn at landing a striped bass or two. They were fun fights. Randy is very efficient. He'll stop by one spot, and if it's not working well, he'll give it 10 or 15 minutes tops, and then immediately take off to try another spot. That's the benefit of being on a boat versus a kayak. Sometimes, even if he catches one fish, he might have the opinion that the spot is not as good as he had hoped, so off we would go to the next spot. Well, he delivers. We all got to take a picture holding a striped bass, including my daughter, my sister-in-law, my aunt, and myself. On another trip I chartered with him, I had chartered a fishing trip with him for my father. It was low tide, and he told me that it was harder to catch a fish at low tide. I told him no problem and no pressure, although I pointed out to him that my father had only flown all the way around the world from the Philippines to fish with him. So there was a little pressure, but he delivered. We caught 14 striped bass on that trip, including one keeper that my father landed. He's so knowledgeable and teaches us a lot about fishing and about the seafood and the ocean. At the end of the trip, he took us to see his lobster traps. One lobster had eggs in it. It was a female lobster, so he taught us about how there were rules to follow to help the lobster population. If you find a lobster with eggs, you have to clip a small V on a part of its tail so that if anyone else catches that same lobster, it'll be released. He mentioned that lobster traps are almost like aquaculture because the lobster traps help feed the small lobsters, which are free to enter and leave the traps whenever they want, and that the traps only catch the larger lobsters, and then you have to measure the lobsters to see if they're keepers or not. At the end of the trip, Randy let us go home with a lot of seafood. We did not catch any keeper striped bass. However, he sent us home with 2 lobsters, lots of mackerel that we had used for bait, and some squid that he had caught while he was waiting for us to depart. We had a feast. Here's the dinner that we had that night. We cooked everything. We cooked the lobsters, the mackerel, and the squid too. It was a delicious dinner. I highly recommend Randy Sigler from Sigler Guide Services in Marblehead, Mass. If you want to charter a fishing guide, call Randy. If Randy is busy, he'll refer you to one of his fishing guide friends who are also very capable. His website is www.striper.com. I'll leave details in the description. Check it out. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please click like, comment, or subscribe. I have other fishing videos on my YouTube channel. Thanks for watching.